You clicked on this video for a reason, and I already know what that reason is. Something in that thumbnail, those 3 words, your inner devil, hit something inside you. Maybe it made you curious. Maybe it made you a little uncomfortable. Maybe, just maybe, it made you feel seen. Because here's the truth that nobody in your life has ever been bold enough to say to you. You are not just the kind, patient, generous person you perform for the world. There is something else living inside you. Something rawer, something stronger, something that doesn't fit neatly into the good person story you tell yourself every single morning. And today, right here in this video, we are going to expose it. Not to destroy you, not to shame you, but to finally, completely set you free. Because here's the boldest claim I'm going to make in this entire video, and I want you to hold me to it. By the time this video ends, the way you see yourself will never be the same again. That's not hype. That's a promise. Let's go. Before we go anywhere, I need you to do something for me. I need you to be completely, brutally honest. Not with me, with yourself. Have you ever, in a quiet moment when nobody was watching, felt genuinely happy that someone failed? Not someone you hate, someone you know, someone in your circle. Have you ever helped someone? Volunteered your time, your energy, your resources? But somewhere in the back of your mind, you were keeping score. Have you ever walked into a room, looked around, and immediately started sizing people up? Figuring out who has more than you, who has less, who you need to impress, who you can ignore? Have you ever said, "I'm fine," when you were burning? Have you ever smiled and said, "Congratulations," when every cell in your body was screaming something very different? If you answered yes to any of that, and if you're honest, you answered yes to all of it, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not evil. You are not a bad person. You are a human being with an inner devil that has been caged, shamed, and silenced for so long it started to leak. And those leaks, that quiet jealousy, that hidden anger, that invisible scorekeeping, those aren't signs of weakness. Those are signs that your inner devil is ready to be exposed. And today, we're going to do exactly that. The story that started 500 years ago. To understand your inner devil, we need to go back, way back, to Florence, Italy, 1469. A boy is born into a modest family, not royal, not wealthy, not powerful. His name is Niccolo Machiavelli, and he is, without question, one of the most misunderstood human beings who ever lived. Growing up in Florence, which at that time was basically the center of the world, Machiavelli watched everything. He watched the Medici family rise to almost godlike power, controlling the banks, the churches, the armies. He watched good men, honest men, moral men, get crushed by the political machine around them. He watched charming men with zero moral compass climb to the top of every ladder in every room. And instead of looking away, like most people do, Machiavelli leaned in. He got a job in the Florentine government. He became a diplomat. He traveled across Europe on missions, meeting kings, popes, warlords, and everywhere he went, he studied one thing: what actually makes people powerful, not what should make them powerful, what actually does. He watched Cesare Borgia, the son of a pope, ruthless beyond imagination, consolidate power across central Italy, not through goodness, but through a combination of calculated violence, strategic generosity, and absolute psychological control. He watched Pope Alexander VI, Cesare's father, manipulate the entire Catholic Church like a chessboard. He watched kings who prayed and preached lose wars, and kings who lied and maneuvered win empires. And after decades of watching, Machiavelli sat down and wrote the most dangerous book in human history, The Prince, published in 1532, 9 years after his death. The Prince was immediately banned by the Pope. It was called satanic. It was called immoral. It was called the Handbook of the Devil. And for 500 years, rulers, presidents, CEOs, generals have read it in private while condemning it in public. Because Machiavelli didn't write about the world people wished existed. He wrote about the world that actually does. And in that world, your inner devil isn't a flaw. It's your greatest asset. What is your inner devil, really? Let's define this properly, because I don't want you to misunderstand what I mean when I say your inner devil. I'm not talking about evil. I'm not talking about hurting people, manipulating innocence, or becoming someone cruel. Your inner devil is something very specific. It is the part of you that wants, deeply, honestly, unapologetically, without needing permission. It is the part of you that feels fully, intensely, without filters, without needing approval. It is the part of you that knows, instinctively, clearly, without confusion, what you want, what you won't accept, and what you're willing to fight for. Most people spend their entire lives disconnected from this part of themselves. They've been trained to be disconnected from it. Think about how you grew up. From the time you were a child, you were taught to share even when you didn't want to be quiet even when you had something to say, to smile even when you were hurting, to be grateful even when you were being treated badly. Every single one of those lessons, well-intentioned as they were, taught you one thing: your raw, honest, unfiltered feelings are dangerous. Hide them. And so you did. You built a version of yourself that was safe, acceptable, palatable, and you locked your inner devil in the basement. But here's the thing about locking something in a basement: it doesn't disappear. It gets stronger. It gets louder. It starts knocking on the door at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep, making you wonder why you feel so empty despite doing everything right. It starts leaking out in your relationships, in the sharp words you say when you're just tired, in the distance you create when you feel overlooked, in the resentment that builds quietly for years until one day it explodes. Your inner devil has been trying to tell you something for a long time. Today, we finally listen. I want to say something that might make you want to stop watching, and I'm going to say it anyway, because you deserve to hear the truth. The reason you're not where you want to be in life, the reason the promotion hasn't come, the relationship isn't what you imagined, the business hasn't launched, the dream is still just a dream. It is not because you're not talented enough. It is not because you don't work hard enough. It is not because the world is unfair, although it is. The reason is simpler and harder than all of that. You have been so busy managing your inner devil, keeping it quiet, keeping it hidden, keeping it acceptable, that you have never once unleashed it in the direction of your actual goals. Your ambition is locked in the basement. Your desire is locked in the basement. Your hunger, the real, honest, unashamed hunger for more, is locked in the basement, and you've been up here on the ground floor performing contentment. Machiavelli saw this pattern everywhere he looked. He called it the greatest tragedy of capable people, not that they lacked power, but that they refused to claim it. The question is, are you ready to claim yours? Machiavelli never used the phrase inner devil. That's my framing. But everything he wrote points to the same truth. Every human being carries what I've identified as the three faces of their inner devil, and I want to go deep on each one, because understanding which face is most dominant in you is the key to everything that comes after. Face 1. The manipulator. I know. The word makes you uncomfortable. Good. Sit with that discomfort for a second, because the discomfort is the point. You manipulate. Every single day. Not in some dramatic villain movie way. In the quiet, constant, socially acceptable way that humans have been doing since the beginning of civilization. You choose your words carefully based on who you're talking to. You frame stories in ways that make you look better. You ask for things at specific moments, when someone is in a good mood, when they just received good news, when they owe you a favor. You use tone of voice, timing, body language, all of it, constantly, to influence the people around you. This is manipulation, and the fact that it makes you uncomfortable to call it that. That's just the cage talking. Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia's use of strategic manipulation in extraordinary detail. Borgia, who controlled most of central Italy by his early 30s, had a method that Machiavelli found fascinating. When Borgia entered a new territory, he didn't immediately impose fear. He first observed. He spent weeks understanding the key players: who was loyal, who was ambitious, who was afraid, who was desperate. He learned what each person wanted most. And then, with perfect timing, he gave some of them exactly what they wanted. Not out of generosity, out of strategy. He made people feel seen, valued, important. And then, when the time was right, he moved against his enemies with surgical precision, using the very people he'd cultivated as his instruments. Now, I'm not telling you to go Cesare Borgia on your co-workers, but I am telling you this: The manipulator inside you is your strategic intelligence. It's the part of you that reads a room, that understands people, that knows how to communicate your ideas in ways that actually land. The people who suppress this completely, who refuse to ever be strategic, who say, "I just say what I think no matter what." These people don't get promoted, they don't get heard, they don't lead, they get left behind while wondering why nobody listens to them. Your manipulator face, the inner devil of strategy, doesn't need to be destroyed, it needs to be trained. Face 2, the competitor. This one hits differently, because we live in a culture that has very complicated feelings about competition. On one hand, we love competition in sports, in business, in entertainment. On the other hand, we tell people to not compare yourself to others, to run your own race, to be happy for people. And that creates a very specific kind of psychological torture. Because you do compare yourself every single day. You look at someone in your field who has what you want, the followers, the salary, the title, the relationship, the lifestyle, and something happens inside you, something hot and uncomfortable and ugly. You call it jealousy, you hate yourself for feeling it, you slap a smile on and say good for them, and then you go home and feel vaguely depressed and you don't quite know why. Here's why. Machiavelli, in Discourses on Livy, his lesser-known but equally brilliant work, wrote about what he called the acquisitive instinct, the instinct to acquire, to gain, to rise. He argued against almost every moral philosopher of his time that this instinct is not a sin. It is the engine of human civilization. Every great city built, every great invention created, every great movement started, began with someone who saw what existed and wanted more beauty, more justice, more knowledge, more power. The desire for more is not the problem. The shame around the desire for more, that's the problem. When you feel that flare of competitive fire, that why them and not me heat, Machiavelli would tell you to stop feeling guilty about it immediately and instead ask it the right question. What does this feeling tell me I actually want? Because your competitive inner devil is the most precise goal-finding instrument you have. It doesn't lie, it doesn't hedge, it doesn't perform, it just points, directly, honestly, uncomfortably, at exactly what you want your life to look like. The people who listen to it, who take that competitive heat and channel it into focused, strategic action, those are the people who close the gap. The people who suppress it, who tell themselves they're not competitive, who pride themselves on not caring about what others have, they don't close the gap, they just stop measuring it while it grows. I had a friend, genuinely one of the smartest people I've known. Every time someone in his circle got ahead, new job, new opportunity, recognition, he'd be the first to celebrate them publicly. And privately, he'd spiral. He'd spend days in his head, feeling vaguely worthless, questioning his choices, wondering what was wrong with him. But here's the thing, he never used that feeling. He never sat down and said, "Okay, this is telling me something. What do I actually want? And what is the one move I can make this week to get closer to it?" 3 years passed. Everyone around him moved forward. He was still in the same place, same job, same apartment, same conversations, wearing the same smile. His inner devil, his competitor, had been screaming at him for 3 years. He just never listened. Don't make that mistake. Face 3, the power seeker. This is the face that gets people in the most trouble. Not because it's the most dangerous, but because it's the most honest. You want power. I know you've been told not to say that. I know power sounds like something villains want in movies, but let's be real about what power actually means. Power means you have a say in your own life. Power means people take you seriously when you speak. Power means you can protect the people you love. Power means your decisions matter. Who wouldn't want that? The problem isn't that you want power. The problem is that you've been shamed into whispering it, or worse, denying it completely. Machiavelli was absolutely ruthless on this point. He wrote, and I'm going to give you the essence of his argument. A person who pretends not to want power will always be ruled by someone who admits they do. Read that again. If you walk around performing humility while secretly wanting influence, you are handing your power to whoever is honest enough to take it openly. The people at the top of every field, business, politics, entertainment, academia, are not there by accident. They are not there because they were the most talented. They are not there because they worked the hardest. They are there because at a crucial moment, they made a decision that most people are too afraid to make. They decided that they deserved to be there. That is the power-seeker face of your inner devil, and it is not arrogance. It is the most fundamental form of self-respect. Okay, let's just pause here for a second, because I want to acknowledge something. If you're still watching, if you made it to this point in the video, you're not like most people. Most people clicked away the moment this got uncomfortable. Most people heard your inner devil and expected something entertaining, not something that actually challenged them. But you're still here, and I think I know why. Because somewhere in the last few minutes, somewhere in the manipulator, the competitor, or the power seeker, you recognized yourself, maybe for the first time clearly. And now you're wondering, okay, so what do I do with this? That's exactly what comes next. Because knowing your inner devil is only the beginning. The real question, the Machiavellian question, is this. How do you take this raw, uncomfortable, powerful energy and turn it into the life you actually want? That's what the second half of this video is about. And I promise you, it's worth staying for. The moment your inner devil gets exposed, and what most people do wrong, there is a specific moment, a turning point moment, that every person who has ever done anything meaningful in their life can point to. I call it the exposure moment. It's the moment when your inner devil stops whispering and starts screaming. It looks different for everyone. For some people, it's a rejection, a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, a door that slammed in your face. For some people, it's a humiliation, being talked over in a meeting, being dismissed by someone who should have listened, being underestimated by someone who doesn't know your worth. For some people, it's quieter than that. It's just a Tuesday afternoon, nothing dramatic has happened, and you're sitting in your car in a parking lot, and you suddenly feel this overwhelming sense of, is this it? In every one of these moments, your inner devil gets exposed. Something rises, something ancient and powerful and unfiltered. And in that moment, you have two choices. Choice one, the default. You panic. You feel the heat and you immediately start cooling it down. You tell yourself, I'm being too emotional, I'm being dramatic, I need to calm down, this is embarrassing, get it together. You apologize, sometimes to the person who hurt you, sometimes just to the room, sometimes just to yourself. You perform composure, you go back to being acceptable. And the moment passes, but it doesn't leave. It goes back to the basement, a little angrier than before, a little louder, a little more desperate. Choice two, the Machiavellian move. You pause. Not to suppress, to observe. You let yourself feel the full force of what just happened, the anger, the humiliation, the hunger, the clarity. And then you ask the most powerful question Machiavelli ever taught us to ask. What does this moment require of me? Not emotionally, but strategically, because feelings are data, not instructions. The anger tells you a boundary was crossed. The question is, how do you respond in a way that restores the boundary and serves your long-term goals? The humiliation tells you a gap exists between how you want to be seen and how you're currently being seen. The question is, what needs to change to close that gap? The hunger tells you you're not done. The question is, what specifically do you need to move toward? The exposure moment is not a problem. The exposure moment is a map, but only if you know how to read it. The Machiavellian framework. 5 steps. Here is the complete framework, 5 steps, that I've built from Machiavelli's work, applied to the modern reality of being a person who has an inner devil they need to work with instead of against. Step 1. Acknowledge without judgment. This sounds simple. It is not. Every time you feel something dark, jealousy, rage, competitive heat, the hunger for power, the urge to manipulate a situation, your first instinct is to immediately judge it. I shouldn't feel this. What's wrong with me? I'm a bad person. Machiavelli had no patience for this. He believed that self-deception, pretending you don't feel what you feel, was the most dangerous form of stupidity available to a person in power. Because when you lie to yourself about what you feel, you lose the ability to strategize around it. So the first step is brutally simple. When the feeling comes, name it. Not, I'm feeling a bit off. Not, I'm just tired. I am jealous of this person's success. I am furious that I was overlooked. I want more than what I currently have, and I'm ashamed that I want it. Say it internally. clearly, specifically, without apology. Just naming it accurately puts you ahead of most people. Step 2. Trace the information. Your inner devil is always communicating something specific. Jealousy communicates desire. You want something this person has. Find out exactly what it is. Not generally, specifically. Is it their confidence, their platform, their income, their relationship, their freedom? Rage communicates a violated boundary. Something happened that crossed a line you have. Find out exactly which line. Was it respect, fairness, recognition, honesty? Ambition communicates direction. Your inner devil knows where it wants to go, even when your conscious mind is still figuring things out. Let it point. The more specific you get in this step, the more useful the information becomes. Vague feelings produce vague lives. Specific feelings produce specific decisions. Step 3. Separate the feeling from the response. This is the step that Machiavelli built his entire philosophy around. He was not, I want to be clear about this, he was not advising people to be emotionally cold or dead. He was advising them to be disciplined about the gap between feeling and action. Cesare Borgia, for all his ruthlessness, was not impulsive. When an ally betrayed him, he did not react immediately. He waited. He planned. He chose the precise moment and method of his response. That gap, between the feeling and the response, is where your power lives. In modern terms, feel everything fully, in private, then decide what you show the world. When someone disrespects you in a professional setting, feel the anger completely, let it be real, and then choose, very deliberately, what your strategic response is. Maybe it's silence in the moment and a conversation later on your terms. Maybe it's a calm, direct, unapologetic statement that makes your position clear. Maybe it's doing something that renders their disrespect irrelevant by achieving something they can't ignore. All of these are better than reacting in real time from the feeling alone. The feeling is yours, the response is your strategy. Step 4. Act with precision, not passion. Machiavelli observed that the most catastrophic failures of powerful people, kings, generals, rulers, almost always came from acting on passion without precision. A king who executes a general because he's furious creates fear, but also enemies. A person who sends the angry email they shouldn't have sent wins the moment, but loses the war. Precision means knowing what you want as an outcome before you act. Before any significant move, ask yourself the question Machiavelli drilled into every page of The Prince. Will this action move me closer to my goal, or will it satisfy my feeling at the expense of my goal? That question has saved more careers, relationships, and long-term outcomes than any other. Use it. Step 5. Integrate your inner devil as an ally. This is the final step, and in many ways, the most important. The goal of everything in this framework is not to make you more ruthless. It is not to make you colder or more calculating or more willing to hurt people. The goal is integration, to take the part of yourself you've been fighting, the raw, honest, unfiltered inner devil, and make it work with you instead of against you. Think of it as a partnership. Your inner devil provides the raw material, the hunger, the awareness, the drive, the clarity about what matters. Your conscious, strategic mind provides the direction, the plan, the timing, the wisdom about how to pursue what you want without destroying what you have. Together, they are extraordinary. Separately, one makes you passive and lost, the other makes you reactive and destructive. The Machiavellian genius was understanding that this integration was not just possible, it was the defining characteristic of every person who ever achieved something lasting. The philosophy they never taught you. Here is something I want you to sit with. For your entire life, in school, at home, in religious institutions, in social media culture, you have been fed a very specific story about what a good person looks like. A good person is selfless. A good person is humble. A good person doesn't want too much. A good person puts others first, always, consistently, without keeping score. And when you inevitably failed to live up to this story, when you felt jealous or ambitious or angry or hungry for more, you didn't conclude that the story was wrong. You concluded that you were wrong, that something was broken in you, that your inner devil was proof of your inadequacy. Machiavelli spent his entire life arguing against this story, not because he wanted people to become cruel, but because he saw, with devastating clarity, that the story was a trap. The people who told you to be selfless were not themselves selfless. The people who told you not to want power were themselves exercising it in the act of telling you that. The people who preached humility were building systems that rewarded confidence. The story was never designed to help you. It was designed to make you manageable, and your inner devil, that inconvenient, uncomfortable, unapologetic part of you, has been resisting that story your entire life. It has been fighting for your right to be real, to want what you want, to feel what you feel, to pursue what you pursue, without needing to perform humility to make other people comfortable. That is not evil, that is dignity. I want to tell you a story, a real one, that I think captures everything we've talked about today. A woman, I'll call her Sarah, spent 12 years in corporate finance. Brilliant, disciplined, hard-working. She was the person who stayed late when no one asked her to, who took on extra projects, who mentored junior colleagues, who said yes to everything. And she watched, year after year, as men with half her ability got promoted while she was praised and overlooked. Every time she felt the anger rising, she pushed it down. Every time her inner devil said, "Speak up, fight back, demand what you're worth," she told herself, "That's not who I am. I don't want to be that kind of person." She associated her inner devil with aggression, with ego, with the kind of behavior she had been taught was unbecoming. And so she kept working, keep being excellent, keep being quiet. Year 12, she's passed over for a senior director position, a role she was unquestionably the most qualified person in the building for, and it goes to someone who had been at the company for 18 months. That night, she sits in her car in the parking structure, and something she had been locking in the basement for 12 years finally breaks the door down. Her inner devil, fully, completely, undeniably exposed. She felt every face of it simultaneously. The manipulator, you have been playing this game wrong. You have been honest in a system that rewards strategy. The competitor, this is not acceptable. You know what you're worth. Stop pretending you don't. The power seeker, you deserve that room. Not because someone gives it to you, because you take it. The next morning, she walked into the CEO's office. No appointment, no email ahead of time, no apology for the intrusion. She sat down, made eye contact, and said, "I've been here 12 years. I've built 3 of the divisions that generate the majority of this company's revenue. I was passed over yesterday for a role I should have had 2 years ago. I need to know, does this company have a future for me, or have I been wasting my time?" The CEO, who had honestly never really seen her before that moment, sat back in his chair. And for the first time in 12 years, he actually looked at her. 2 months later, she was running a division. Not because of the 12 years of excellent work. The 12 years of excellent work was the table stakes. She got the room because she finally let her inner devil get exposed, because she stopped managing it and started using it. So let's talk about you, not in theory, not in philosophy, not in the story of Cesare Borgia or Machiavelli or Sarah in the parking garage. You, right now, watching this video, you have an inner devil. And I want you to think about one specific area of your life where you've been suppressing it. One place where something inside you has been saying, "This isn't right. This isn't enough. This isn't what I came here to do." And you've been pushing it down. Maybe it's your career. You know you're capable of more, and you've been performing contentment while dying inside. Maybe it's a relationship. You know something needs to be said, has needed to be said for a long time, and you've been keeping it locked in the basement because you're afraid of what happens when it comes out. Maybe it's the thing you want to build, the business, the creative work, the mission that you've been talking about for years without moving on, because the moment you move on it, the inner devil of fear and ambition and "who do I think I am" rises up and you retreat. In every one of these areas, your inner devil is not the obstacle. Your inner devil is the answer. The anger telling you this isn't right. That's information. The hunger telling you you want more, that's direction. The fear disguised as doubt telling you, what if you fail? That's your power seeker trying to protect you from pain, but misidentifying the threat. The threat isn't failure. The threat is spending another year exactly where you are, performing contentment, managing your devil, waiting for permission that will never come. Machiavelli wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by strategy." I want to update that for you for today. Never attempt to suppress by will what needs to be understood by wisdom. Your inner devil doesn't need to be beaten. It needs to be heard. And when you hear it, really hear it, it will tell you everything you need to know about who you are, what you want, and exactly what you need to do next. Let's land the plane. Today, we went deep. We talked about Machiavelli, the most misunderstood genius in human history, and why his 500-year-old observations about human nature are more relevant today than ever. We identified the three faces of your inner devil: the manipulator, the competitor, the power seeker, and why each one is not a flaw but a feature. We walked through the 5-step framework for taking that raw inner devil energy and turning it into strategic, intentional, powerful action. And we told the story of what happens when a person finally, after years of suppression, lets their inner devil get fully, completely exposed. Not to destroy, not to dominate, but to finally be real. Here's my last thought for you. Machiavelli died in 1527, poor, exiled, largely forgotten. He never saw The Prince published. He never knew that his work would survive 500 years and influence every significant leader the world has ever seen. He died thinking he had failed. His inner devil, his hunger for recognition, his desire to matter, his ambition to change the way people understood power, all of it felt at the end like it had been for nothing. But here we are, 500 years later, talking about him, because the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the world tries to bury it, has a way of surviving. Your truth will survive too. The question is, how long are you going to make it wait? If today's video gave you something, one idea, one moment of recognition, one uncomfortable truth you needed to hear, please hit the like button right now. It costs you nothing and it means everything for getting this to the people who need it. Subscribe, because next week we're going deeper. We're taking Machiavelli's 5 laws of power, the ones that were deliberately left out of every history class, and we're applying them to modern life in a way you've never seen. And drop a comment below. And be honest with me, which face of your inner devil have you been suppressing the longest? The manipulator, the competitor, the power seeker,